If you hadn't noticed, I'm British. So with that context, I hope you really appreciate the gravity of what I'm about to say. During my first session with The Sims, my cup of tea went cold, and I didn't even notice. Hi, I'm Dave from Can It Casual. I've only got a few precious hours a week to play games, so I want to make sure they count. On this channel, I play one game for 2 hours a night over 5 nights, and at the end, I answer one very important question. Can it casual? Sul, my friends! This week we're playing The Sims 4, which from now on I'm just going to refer to as The Sims. Sims is one of the biggest life simulation games ever made. It's the 4th iteration which released in 2014 that I'm playing, and somehow it is still going. I am no stranger to The Sims. However, this is mostly due to my partner. She loves The Sims. It is her #1 played game by far. I've seen her sink hours into the game night after night, and she even has us both watching The Sims related content. That being said, I've only ever dabbled with the game once or twice. I was swept up in the initial mad rush for the game over 25 years ago, and I have played the 4th one once since then. Before we dive in, I do have to acknowledge that despite releasing it back in 2014 and the base game being free, The Sims is one of, if not the most expanded and added to and monetized game ever made. High cost of entry is a barrier to being casual, so it made me want to test out 2 things. First, can the base game be enjoyed casually? And secondly, does turning on almost every expansion change that? After spending a little bit of time with the character creator, which boasted a decent amount of customization, I created my Sim self-insert and I was ready to take on the world. Now, one of the reasons I never clicked with The Sims properly in the past is that you can brute force almost anything you want to have happen. I found that I would become really disinterested quickly. If there's no effort, I'll get no reward. With that in mind, I decided to be a little bit more of a passenger in my Sims story. I would just gently nudge him to take care of himself, but for the most part, I was following his lead. I'm sure you veteran Sims players are nodding sagely, but I have to say this approach absolutely hooked me in. I couldn't help it, I was enraptured. I needed to know what happened next. By simply following along with my Sims whims, at the end of session 1 alone, he'd quit his job, found a new one, painted a picture, set himself on fire, and, what became a defining theme of his story, started juggling multiple romantic prospects. I didn't force anything, but I was gripped by the will they, won't they of it all. Hence the cold tea. Actually playing the game is introduced in an incredibly gentle way. There are a large number of systems and features, but none of them are thrown at you, and they're never trying to grab your attention. They sit there, patiently waiting for you to discover them yourself. There is never a feeling of being overwhelmed. You simply find that something is waiting for you when you're ready for it. In fact, it wasn't until around 6 hours into the game that I found my first issue. It's true, I was entirely hooked into the relationship drama that was unfolding before me, but by this point I realized that nothing was happening. Sims all had the tease of something about to happen, but then they'd do something mental rather than naturally progressing. I can't count the number of times my Sims were getting ready to take the next step, only for one of them to stand up for no reason, walk off and do push-ups. And yes, at first I laughed too. The game's got so much charm that this repeated awkwardness is very endearing, but it just kept happening. In order to see some actual payoff, I had to be the one to pull the trigger, and that felt like it cheapened the experience for me. The game is absolutely at its best when your Sims are driving. You're just there, nudging them along. I want them to make their own decisions or mistakes. I am here for the story, especially when the story results in wild moments, such as your one-night stand calling you the next morning to inform you she has adopted a baby. Outside of the relationship drama, there were a couple of odd moments of downtime. When my Sim would go to work, I was left staring at the lot he lived on while waiting for him to come home like a dog excited for its owner to come back. If he received a call during the day, I didn't realize for a little while that it would return time to its regular speed, so there were moments I was just staring at an empty house without speeding time up. Every now and then I also found myself just kind of going through the motions. I'd fast forward another bathroom, shower, meal, bed routine. I know that's part of the life management thing, but come on, it's not the good bit. Overall, I found myself really enjoying what I experienced, only to be slightly disappointed by a lack of payoff. I began to understand why so many fans kept coming back to the game when so many more expansions would release. What stories could you make? So I used my final 2 hours with the game to find out. Logging into my other half's account, importing a save, and a full 40 minutes of installation, I was back. The first thing I noticed was how long it now took me to load into the game. There is, quite clearly, a lot of content here, and the difference between this and the base game loading time is significant. Once I was in though, oh boy, this is what 12 years of add-ons looks like. Remember how earlier I said that the game was feature-rich, but it waits patiently for you to find it? Well, that's no longer true. Things have stepped up in a big way. Within 2 hours, my Sim's simple life on a little cul-de-sac changed dramatically. First, Don Lothario invited himself over because he was having a rough time, despite my Sim only having one bed. The literal Grim Reaper called and asked my Sim to join him in the soul reaping business, and we were even invited on a hidden camera reality TV dating show. Suddenly, the world felt much, much larger. There was also a huge number of changes to systems I'd already interacted with, my favourite being the addition of the dance skill, causing my Sim to throw the absolute dumbest shapes I have ever seen right in front of his friends. So many things just began happening randomly. We flirted with a ghost, we went on a blind date, and we even finally had a Sim make the first move. The world was now full to the brim of storytelling potential. But it should be, because man, the cost of getting here is insane. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing this. My partner has correctly justified it by pointing out this is one of the few games she plays religiously. Each expansion is in place of a different game that I would have purchased myself. She's just given herself more options to play with in her ever-growing sandbox. But as so much time has passed, if you want to get to this point, it's going to cost you a lot. So, with all of that, can The Sims casual? Yes, The Sims can casual, but only at the start. I was so caught off guard by how invested I became in the base game alone, I can see why this has such a following. I can almost justify the lengthy list of expansions that have come with it too. 12 years is a long time. I mean, I'm still not sold on stuff packs though. It respects your time, it welcomes you gently, and it lets you discover it at your own pace. Does that last though? I don't think so. Look, your mileage may vary, especially if you go longer than the 10 hours I played, but eventually I'm pretty sure you'll hit the same wall that I did. The expansions don't just add extra content, they fix behavior, they improve autonomy, they deepen the systems. Once you've seen it, it is hard to go back. But that has a cost, and it's up to you if it's worth it. Thanks for watching. Have you tried The Sims? Are you a long-time Simmer? If so, what keeps you going back? What were your best unprompted Sims moments? Let me know what other games you'd like to find out can casual, and I'll see you next time. Dag, motherfucker.